Welcome back. With us now, I got a very special guest, one of our favorite for the show, Officer Michael Bloom from the Fargo Police Department, to talk about exactly what it is to be a community trust officer. He's one of those guys out there that's really been leading the charge. So thank you for all you do, man. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
So this seems like such an obvious position, a community trust officer, especially with what's going on in our society today. But what does it mean exactly, and how are you implementing it?
For us, it's to go out and reach this generation and the next generation, and to really
What do you mean, this generation? You putting yourself as like a Gen Z right now?
No.
What do you mean, this generation?
I think through social media, through news outlets, a lot of people have lost trust in law enforcement, nationally. But then also the next generation, as in the young people, the K through 5 at the elementary schools that we're visiting, to really build rapport and build trust with them, and to let them know that we as law enforcement value them, we value their future, we want to help them in their future. And so that's really what we're trying to establish every day by visiting schools, visiting treatment centers, and working with our youth.
Well, we had a gentleman on yesterday that's running a hoops camp that you guys go out and are helping him with, and he's getting a chance to mingle with some minority kids. And so I'm just curious, what's the change in conversation that's happening? Because like I asked him, as a Black American, you hear the story about how Black American men have to have the conversation with their sons. How are you changing that potential conversation?
We don't go in with an agenda outside of loving people where they are. So if we go into the juvenile detention center with the gentleman you're talking about, who's a good friend of mine, we don't go in with an expectation, or we don't go in and label them how they are. We just go in to treat them as people, love them as people, connect with them as people. And if you show up enough, it starts changing the narrative of life. I mean, I've seen this in detention centers, I've seen this in treatment centers, and even in schools, because a lot of kids don't have people showing up for them. So the more you show up consistently and follow through, it's not even doing special activities, it's just being a consistent voice. And so the more we do that, the more seeds we plant, and I think it's going to really help us in our long-term goals.
This may not be the best analogy, but what's popping in my head is sort of that Goodwill Hunting moment when Robin Williams with Matt, right? Like, they just sit there in silence for a while. I mean, like, I guess what I'm wondering is, how are you breaking those barriers? Because I'm assuming you're walking into some kids listening of you that are like, oh, the cops are here.
Yeah.
And you've got to sort of shift that dynamic.
Yeah, but I don't come at kids as a cop. I come at kids as a person. I come at kids.
I'm not saying you, but you still bump up against that listening to they have, right? Like,
sometimes, but the longer you sit with them and the longer you stay with them, you almost force conversation, you force dialogue, you force, and you also just meet them where they're at. If they like a certain activity, you invite yourself to go on that activity with them. You join them on activity, and then you show back up the next day or the next week, and all of a sudden they're like, this face keeps coming, and it turns in from how's your day to start learning about how's your life and what's going on in your life. So it's kind of a cool way to just be transparent with kids, be vulnerable, let them know police are people and that we have our struggles, that not all police are perfect and not everything they've seen has been perfect by police. Because there's no one right side. It's just learning how can we work together as a community and be better. So
how does it change what happens to diminish crime in a community?
Oh man, I would say right now we have some programming going that's really, really beneficial for youth in our city. Diversion program going on through the Fargo Police Department. For first-time offenders for youth, and also parents reaching out to us to connect with their kids to plant them in mentorship programs. So really just helping changing the mindset of kids and changing that mindset into leadership and how to be a better citizen in their community, in their school. Challenging them to be a better, I would say, child for their parent, you know what I'm saying, and serve them and help them. So we're really just trying to change the narrative on how kids think. Because if you really can change how someone thinks, you can change how they act and live. A lot of kids, they have a stereotype or they have a label because of a circumstance they've been through or grown up in. So we're just trying to help that narrative shift. Let them know there's another way, there's a better way.
Are you beatboxing with them?
I'll do whatever I can to reach a kid, man. I freestyle rap in the most awkward moments you've ever seen. So
how about right now?
There's no...
this is awkward.
You're pretty safe, so I think you're good. You're going to make it. I think you're good to go. You're a Stanford grad, you know.
It's always great to have you here, and thanks for what you're doing. We really
appreciate you, man.
A bunch. All right, stay with us. We got much more coming up right after this.